Hey everybody, what's up? Yeah, I thought I'd kind of take this moment and, well, I was thinking about this last night and, quite frankly, um, I was digging through some of the DVDs I had hidden or packed away, and I came upon two that I needed, and that being, of course, my Bonkers um, DVD. Hold on. My Bonkers DVDs that I needed. Sorry about that. But yeah, I came across two of the Bonkers, Disney Bonkers DVDs that I created. The Best of Bonkers, which involved the uncut version of the pilot, and also the sequel, if you will, the mid-season sequel, New Partners, and of course a personal favorite of mine, Castle Bonkers, and then a few fan bits. So I was able to find that along with the DVD that I just dedicated to the uncut version of the pilot Going Bonkers and the sequel New Partners on the Block. Now, the reason I bring that up is because I was thinking, I want to give my thoughts. I've got about at least, I would say, hold on. I've got about 14 minutes here, so I'm going to try my best to give my thoughts in short fashion of the Bonkers, of Going Bonkers and New Partners. Now, I had talked about them before, but I just thought about it yesterday, and I thought, you know what, I should talk about it again, kind of give more analytic thoughts, if you will. And to me, I know a lot of people kind of get on Bonkers for not being probably the best Disney show out there during the Disney afternoon days, and a lot of fans of Rescue Rangers blame the Bonkers show for Rescue Rangers being kicked off, but that was part of the Disney afternoon routine. Every new show that came up every new year, the show that was the oldest and was the first to be seen on the Disney afternoon would be kicked off. So it happened basically when Darkwing Duck came around. It happened to the Gummy Bears, because they were the first show. Then it happened to DuckTales when Goof Troop came around. And of course it happened with Rescue Rangers when Bonkers came around. So, with that all said, let's take a look at, let's talk about Going Bonkers, which was when Going Bonkers aired in two parts on the regular broadcast. Basically, it's weekly broadcast, if you will, weekly cycle. It was separated into two different episodes, Going Bonkers being the first one and Gone Bonkers. The big difference between both, especially on the VHS to which they're incorporated on, that I noticed is the big difference is they've been edited. In other words, there are certain scenes and moments, just real quick ones here and there, maybe some that we knew about but thought, well, why are they? But when we would see the weekday broadcast, we'd be like, well, where's that part at? Even if it was a small part or whatever. And yeah, the weekday versions of them were edited, just like Tailspin's Plunder and Lightning was edited, to where even the song Home Is Where the Heart Is was cut out. So it was edited to certain points so they can shorten it. But when you would watch the pilot, no matter how you would watch it, I would actually recommend watching the uncut version, because yeah, there's just small scenes that got cut out, but they do help make the pilot a lot better. And there's no fading out at the end of Going Bonkers and the next one comes up, it says Gone Bonkers. It's just one continuous thing. It's a movie, basically. And when I look at this, I think in a sense, when I look at this episode, I think in a sense that Disney, I felt, looked at Going Bonkers, or looked at the Bonkers show as being the next meal ticket. I mean, obviously they knew they had something with Goof Troop because we got a Goofy movie about 2 years later, or a year and a half later. But they had so much invested in Bonkers. You know, even to the point that they replaced an entire animation and writing, basically an entire creative team with another, because the original concept for Bonkers, or at least the majority of the episodes, except for 19 of them, a majority of those episodes didn't come off the way people wanted them to. So basically, the original concept, at least for 19 episodes, was scrapped and replaced with what we got. And that's starting with this. And I have to say that when I looked at Going Bonkers, and I'm sure a lot of you looked at it as well, growing up with the show, watching it through various other places like here on, like Daily Motion, places like the YT, Vimo, VO, you name it. You have to admit that when they did Going Bonkers, you have to kind of give them credit for incorporating the theatrical featurette. Sorry, I had to put something there. Put down the. Sorry, I just had to put down the little keyhole here, or little holding mechanism I have attached to my phone. But anyway, you have to admit, when you first saw Going Bonkers, as it originally aired uncut and unedited, or whatever, you have to give them credit for the fact that when they decided to put this script together, that they wanted to incorporate Pedal to the Metal, which was the first cartoon for Bonkers, Fawn, Jitters, and Grumbles, and the fact there was also a theatrical one. So you have to give them credit for incorporating that into it, so that at least it has a story. At least you now have an idea that, oh, these weren't just regular cartoons and new characters and all that. These were actually legitimately, this was actually something that they did for a living. Kind of, in the same vein as the Roger Rabbit deal. I will admit that. Like I said, in almost the same vein and everything as the Roger Rabbit situation. So, at least at least for us, not knowing that, because let's be honest, when Pedal to the Metal came out in '92, we didn't know it was going to be part of something else. We didn't know that, and yet here it was. And like I said, here it was. And again, I like the fact that they incorporated that in. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, they finished that cartoon. How can they get fired during the middle of making it? Well, here's the thing about that. Here's the thing. Kind of being true to life in a sense, even with a cartoon like this, sometimes movies, TV shows, featurettes, whatever you want to call it, have to go back and reshoot a lot of scenes, even if they pretty much do the finale. Pretty much if they already filmed the finale and all that, there's certain other things they got to shoot. So, there's certain, like certain scenes and stuff they may have to shoot, and in a sense, that's what I guess they were kind of going with here. Like, maybe they were back reshooting certain scenes or something like that to make sure it came off polished. It came out good. And, and that was a truck going by. And that basically, let me take time here. That basically opened the door to interpret what happens at the end of this whole thing. Because at the end of Going Bonkers, the guy that, the studio guy, the studio boss that, fires Bonkers. That's what happens here. Bonkers gets fired along with his friends because for 1 week, just 1 week, his studio gets toppled by another studio in the ratings or something like that, and now he wants to bring Bonkers back. So you can interpret at the end that the deal Bonkers made with him was, hey, let's finish this one cartoon and that's it. So that you fired us during the middle of and go from there. And I'm thinking that's exactly what happened. Again, I'm thinking that's exactly what happened from a storyline perspective. Now, like I said, looking at the episode and the pilot itself overall, I gotta give him credit for putting a lot of effort into it. I mean, the way, when you first see the antagonist, the first villain Bonkers ever faces in The Collector, at first you kind of see an intimidating figure. Like, this guy's really threatening. Who knows what he's got planned for Bonkers and his friends. And, yeah, you really start getting invested. But then I'll admit, when they do reveal what he's truly like and everything, it kind of gets a little like, all that build and hype towards his character, finally showing him off completely, and this is what we get. It's like, all that, and this is the result. And I admit it was a kind of I admit it wasn't the best satisfactory. It wasn't the best result or best satisfactory for a villain, but I thought at first when you saw The Collector, he was intimidating. He made you get interested and intrigued and enveloped in what was going to happen. And then when you do see him, it's in the way he acts. It's like, really, seriously? You're trying to put in some of that intimidation in there, but it's like, really? This is what we get? It's kind of like with Robotnik in Sad AM. The first season, Robotnik was more threatening. He had a little bit of humor, but more threatening than he ever was. Even Doug Walker says that this is a badass Robotnik, or was a badass Robotnik. So, by having that element, and then it makes you get intrigued, it makes you interested, it gets you involved or enveloped into what Sad AM has to offer, and then you get into season 2, you still get that threateningness, that badassness out of him as a villain, but you get more of a comedic side, more like, okay, we had a very threatening, very serious, deadly kind of villain in Robotnik in the first season, and now all of a sudden we got this for the second season, and it's like, why? And you think to yourself, why? And that's kind of like with The Collector. But the difference between the two is Robotnik's was by season. Robotnik's changed somewhat in demeanor, and the way he was portrayed at times was between seasons. This was all in one episode, one pilot, if you will. So, it's kind of 50-50 on the villain. There's a positive and a negative. The positive was, when you first see him, he's intimidating, he's intriguing, he's mysterious, he's almost very like, ooh, you don't want to mess with this guy. But then yet, the negative is when you see him fully for the first time and the way he acts, it's like, really? Yes, you get that intimidation factor, but this is what we get? Really? didn't make any sense. So, to me, when I look at the Collector as a villain here, I have to say it was 50-50. Now, the relationship between Bonkers and Lucky, very similar to Eddie Valiant, Roger Rabbit. The only thing is, Lucky, until midpoint of the first half of this, doesn't even know Bonkers has never been a cop. He's just going by what the chief believes Bonkers was. And to me, that really helps build that friendship, that kind of rocky friendship and partnership between the two. Because now Lucky has to learn, hey, this guy is right about certain things when it comes to tunes, but now I gotta help him learn to be a cop, and he's gotta help me learn how tunes tick and how they think. So I'll give him kudos on the fact that with the first half they kind of built towards it, and how even when Lucky thinks he's freed and everything's cool, he finds out the truth and then finds out, okay, maybe I really do need Bonkers as my partner, because he was right about all this. So again, I give him a lot of credit here. I really do with that part. So another thing I give him credit for is the fact that they did give some of the co-star characters of Bonkers some lines. I mean, I've talked about this before, I'll say it again. Fondier, along with Grumbles and Jitters, had more lines in New Partners than they did in Going Bonkers. But when I see Going Bonkers, the one that really had the most lines out of those three was, out of the three of them, was Fawn. She had the line of saying, hey, I'm overqualified, but she also has the line of saying, but she also says the one thing before her and the others are captured, that they'll stand by Bonkers. And it's like, in a sense, if things had worked out a certain way, they had things planned for that character. They really did. I just think some of those ideas got dumped, if you know what I'm saying. So overall, I give him credit for at least giving some of the characters lines, and probably giving Fawn one of the most significant lines, and saying that they'll stick by him. So I really like that. So overall, when you look at the Going Bonkers pilot Uncut, I have to say it was probably one of the better pilots out there in the 90s. Despite how you feel about the show and the characters overall, it was one of the better ones. And its follow-up, New Partners on the Block, was just as good. You could tell it's the same animation team. The way they built that relationship and friendship between Bonkers and Miranda, the way that during that memorial dinner, supposedly, they got everybody involved in searching for cans with Lucky's writing on it. The fact that they had more screen time, speaking time, it was great. I thought they did an overall good job with the follow-up as well. So, and the way they used it to pass the baton, pass the torch from Lucky to Miranda, the way that was done. That one scene where she's telling Lucky good luck. To me, I can't think of any better follow-up to a movie pilot as far as sequels go than New Partners. I can't think of any better follow-up. And again, despite how you may feel about it. So, I definitely recommend checking out the Going Bonkers pilot Uncut, and checking out his follow-up New Partners on the Block. You'll really enjoy it. They got great antagonists on both. 50-50 on the Collector one, but great antagonists, great stories on both, and I really recommend checking them out. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to head back to work now. I am out.